Hello, this is Adam YJ once again, giving you another story via webcam, this time from the Norse myths. This is the story of how the walls of Asgard were built. Now, long ago, before our grandfathers' grandfathers' grandfathers were born, the gods of the North went to war. Now, it wasn't uncommon for them to go to war, but this was a different war because it was a war between gods. The Asir, the gods of Asgard, went to war with the Vanir, the gods of Vanaheim. It was a long, hard war. And when it was over, well, things weren't like they were before. For you see, the walls that had protected Asgard for centuries had fallen. Now, they all knew it was important to rebuild this wall to protect themselves from the giants and the trolls, but none of the gods wanted to take it upon themselves to do it. So it happened that one day, a stranger on horseback came riding over Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. Now, he met up with Hemdale, the sentry. Hemdale said, "Who are you? What business do you have with the gods of Asgard?" And the stranger said, "I have an offer to make the gods." Hemdale said, "You can make your offer to me." The stranger said, "I make my offer to all the gods, or I make it to none of them." Now this rankled Hemdale, but he went and consulted with Odin. And Odin called a grand meeting in the hall of Gladsheim. All the gods were present so that they could hear out what the stranger had to say. Now the stranger stood before Odin and said, "I can rebuild the wall of Asgard. I can make it stronger and taller than it was before." Now this pleased Odin. He said, "Really? And the catch is?" The stranger said, "It'll take 18 months to do it." Odin said, "That might be possible. And your price?" Then the mason smiled. He said, "My price is that I want Freya, the goddess of love, for my wife." Now this shocked everyone there. To give away their beautiful Freya. She was the goddess who was so radiant that you couldn't look directly at her. Only Odin was capable of that. Freya, who could weep tears of gold. He said, "No, it's not possible. Name another price." The stranger said, "Well, I wasn't even done. I want Freya for my wife, but I also want the sun, and I want the moon." Freya, the sun, and the moon. Take it or leave it. Now everyone in the hall started shouting out, saying things, "Impossible, inconceivable, blasphemy, sacrilege." Then one voice shouted out, "I think we should think about this." All eyes turned to that voice. It was Loki, the god of mischief, the shape changer. Now, the gods all tolerated Loki, but they didn't appreciate his tricks much. Saying, "Okay, listen, just hear me out. Let's send him outside, we'll talk amongst ourselves, and maybe we can come up with something." So Odin reluctantly agreed, and they sent the stranger outside to wait for them to deliberate. Now Loki says, "All right, here's the idea. Instead of 18 months to finish this wall, let's give him 6. Odin said, "That's impossible. He could never finish a great wall like that in only 6 months." And Loki says, "That's the idea exactly. If he passes it over the deal, we lose nothing. If he tries and fails, and we get part of the wall built. We don't lose Freya. We don't lose the sun. We don't lose the moon. What have we really got to lose? Now, the gods reluctantly agreed that that was a good idea. Some even wished they had thought of it themselves. So they called the mason back in. He said, "Mason, you may build our wall. You may have the price you asked for, but you must finish it in 6 months. Tomorrow is the first day of winter. You must finish the wall by the first day of summer. If you do not, then you are paid nothing." Now, the mason thought about this and said, "Oh, this will be hard," but it was Freya, beautiful Freya. Everyone wanted Freya. "I'll accept your offer on a couple of conditions. One, you must allow me the use of my horse Svadilfari. And two, I wish to have freedom from Thor's wrath. I understand that he can be quite stubborn. If he disagrees, well, I don't want to be at the end of his hammer." Now, the gods understood, because Thor was very quick to anger, and he wasn't there right now. He was off in the east fighting trolls, so they thought, "Okay, you shall have your freedom from Thor. As for the horse," Loki said, "Oh, come on, how much difference could a horse make?" "All right, you may use your horse." So the next day, the mason set out to work. He'd lead his horse, Svadilfari, down to the rock quarry, and he'd cut huge chunks of stone. And then he laid out this big net behind the horse, and he loaded the chunks of stone onto the net, and he took the ends and he hitched it to the horse. And then the horse, on a command, would start dragging this huge load of stones down to where the wall was being built. And then he'd cut them into smaller stones and line them up and cement them in place and start building the wall. Now, the gods were watching, and they were amazed that this horse could drag so much stone, but Asgard had a big wall, so they weren't particularly worried. And so this happened every day, all throughout the winter. Through snow and sleet and rain and hail, through cold days and warmer days, and into the spring. Through the rain and the warm days of spring, till finally summer was about to begin, and looking out upon the wall, only the gateway had not been finished. Now Odin called a great meeting of the gods in Gladsheim again. And the first thing he said was, "We must stop this wall from being finished. Whose idea was it to let him build the wall?" All eyes turned to Loki. He's like, "What? We agreed on this, all of us." And Odin said, "And whose idea was it to let him use his horse?" Eyes turned back to Loki. Like, I didn't think one horse was going to make that big of a difference. Who could have thought that horse could drag so much stone? Odin walked up to Loki and said, "We are about to lose Freya. We are about to lose the warmth of the sun and the light of the moon. You got us into this mess. You get us out." So Loki saw that favor was against him. "Oh, fine. I'll get us out of this mess. This mess that we all got into together. Not my fault." apparently you guys aren't smart enough to figure out a way anyway, so I'll just pull our butt out of the fire, and then he can thank Loki for saving us. Now, the next day was the last day before summer started. And the mason was leading his horse down to the quarry. But as he's going, what should come out from the woods but this beautiful mare? The mare trotted up to Svadilfari, gave him a little wink, trotted back to the edge of the forest, and tore off through the woods. Now, Svadilfari could hardly resist himself. He broke away from the mason, tore off into the woods, and then the mason started chasing after him, calling him, cursing him out, looking for the horses, but they were long gone. So, the mason would have to finish building the gateway himself. He went down, he cut the stones, dragged them up to where the wall was being built, cut them, cemented them in place, and went back down to the quarry, got more stones. He couldn't move quite as much as Svadilfari was, nowhere near as much. So, the next day came, the day of his deadline, and only a quarter of the gateway had been completed. Now, he was so mad that the deal was broken that he burst his disguise and he was revealed to be a rock giant, one of the ancient enemies of Asgard. And then, seeing who he really was, the gods decided it was okay to go back on their promise, and they called for Thor. Now, it was a few months before they saw Loki again, and when he came back, he was leading a beautiful little colt, which was a strange colt because he had 8 legs. Now, Odin fell head over heels for this colt, and Loki said, "You like him? He's yours. His name's Sleipnir. He's the fastest horse in all the 9 realms, faster than the wind and faster than the lightning." And so, Sleipnir became Odin's trusted steed throughout the rest of his days, up until the time when Asgard fell. But that's another story. Alright, I said Norse myths. I'll be uploading more stories, but if you need to find one, 291 in Dewey Decimal, that's where you find myths. So, if anyone's out there watching, please comment. I could use the views. Thank you. And